Hey everyone, NoZoupForYou here with an episode of Help and Ensign. Now if you consider yourself a good player, the skills that I'm going to cover in this video might be a little below your playing level. However, if you're like me and like to help people, stick around and watch because the skills in this video can be taught to players that you're trying to help. Maybe you've just started World of Warships and you find you're getting dominated by other players and you want to help yourself survive a little longer. Or maybe you've been playing World of Warships for quite a while and your skills just aren't where you want them to be. You think you should be playing a lot better than you really are. I'm going to give you a couple tips here that are going to help you be a better player. I'm going to give you some knowledge that hopefully you can translate into skill. Now while you're watching this video, don't get hung up on the term good player. When it comes down to it, it's all about how you help your team and how much enjoyment you get out of the game. So sit tight, relax, and watch tips on how to be a better player. Think of World of Warships as a game of chess instead of a first-person shooter. A good player thinks several moves ahead. They can wargame a given situation and determine many possible outcomes. They understand the enemy's intent, or several possible moves the enemy might make, and they react in a way that provides them the upper hand while mitigating danger. Most players are reactive. They see a situation and they react to it. A good player is proactive and will actively anticipate the enemy's moves. In order to be a good player, you must get past the one-on-one engagement mindset. Most players see an enemy ship and see an opportunity to engage. That player will then move forward and attack. A good player is patient. They don't rush into any given situation. This is especially true in battleships and cruisers. You have time to think things out, and as previously mentioned, wargame the situation. The good player observes the battlefield first. They realize that by moving forward while attacking, they're yielding the protection and cover they have. Instead, the good player uses terrain to their advantage. They might opt to stay put instead of charging forward. They will use terrain to shield themselves from ships that are or may be on their flank. Most players see a threat and fire until the enemy is gone, or they themselves are sunk. The good player knows when to fire, and most importantly, when to not fire. Should you really give your battleship's position away by firing at a ship over 20 kilometers away? Or, depending on your battleship's maximum concealment, should you hold fire until a ship is much closer? A good player understands that if they are under fire from the enemy and continue shooting, they will stay spotted. A good player understands their concealment range and knows when to stop firing, even if the enemy is close enough that they can still do damage to it, especially if outnumbered by the enemy. That being said, a good player knows when the odds are against him or her, given their own ship and the enemy's ships. If you're in a battleship against 2 or maybe 3 cruisers, you might be able to hold your ground or engage depending on individual skill. 1 cruiser against 2 battleships, and you might want to run. Most players are aware of danger. Good players know how to mitigate that danger and subsequent damage. They'll angle in such a way that they minimize the risk from the biggest threat. You might be taking damage while broadside to a cruiser, but it's better than taking penetration from the shells of that battleship you're keeping in front of you. Most players react to ships that they see. A good player reacts to ships they don't see. Understand the lineup of the enemy team. A good player uses his or her knowledge to supplement their skill. For example, most destroyer captains know what ships have radar. A good player not only knows what ships have radar, he or she knows the range of the radar. By knowing that player avoids situations in which they're detected at inopportune times. If you're approaching a cap and are spotted and there's only 1 destroyer on the enemy team, you've likely found it. Always assume torpedoes are inbound. Work to mitigate the threat. Most players play World of Warships as a single player or solo game. A good player draws off the strength of the team. Even if they're not in a division, a good player knows that playing as a team is better than going it alone. They understand the weaknesses of their own ship and know how to complement those with the strengths of others. A good player holds their fire. They wait for the enemy to go broadside, giving them the best chance to inflict as much damage as possible. A good player knows what shell type to fire and where. Most players might aim center mast with armored piercing shells. The good player knows where to lead the enemy and to aim at the waterline to maximize the potential for citadel hits. Conversely, they know not to continue firing AP at the waterline of angled battleships. They'll aim for the superstructure, or will switch to HE to maximize damage. Most players will target one ship and continue to fire at it. A good player will spread damage. In cruisers, they'll use HE to set one target on fire, then move on to the next. Or, they'll start a fire and switch to AP while the fire still burns. They don't focus on only one ship. Most players will use smoke preemptively and defensively. A good player uses smoke sparingly and offensively. They won't pop smoke immediately in a cap. They'll save it for when it can maximize damage or aid their team. Most players have a favorite set of captain skills. They'll use these skills for every ship they have. A good player researches captain skills and chooses them according to the ship they're playing. There are many good repositories that provide options for captain skills. Researching each ship will show you what is favored and works well for that particular ship. A good player understands their limitations and capitalizes off of them. They don't allow limitations to become weaknesses. Even an average player is integral to the team. Some players just don't have the skill of others. This is the same with any game, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you know that you're not what some would call a good player, don't let that dictate the game for you, or even your attitude. Have fun and support the team the best you can. Be the AA support ship if you're in a ship capable of that. Do that instead of charging off on your lonesome to take on the enemy by yourself. Your battleships or carriers will appreciate it, and no matter your skill level, the longer you survive, the more powerful you become. Lastly, for now, a good player will take the advice of better players. I've learned much from my contemporaries. I continue to learn. You might be doing these things and not realize it. You might not be doing any of these things at all. But next time you play, pay closer attention to these tips and what you're doing. See if your gameplay style mimics what the good players are doing, and adjust accordingly. I wish you the best of luck in your quest to become a better player. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all later.